So let's just review what the FDA and CDC are recommending. They're saying, number one, if you are a Johnson & Johnson vaccine recipient, and if you're someone who got the vaccine 2 months ago or more, then you are now eligible for a booster shot. Second, they're saying if you got the Moderna or Pfizer vaccine and you're more than 6 months out, you are eligible as well if you fall into one of 3 high-risk categories. You're over 65, you've got other medical conditions like diabetes or high blood pressure that put you at higher risk, or you live and work in a place where your risk of exposure to COVID is greater. You know, in terms of whether you should get that or whether it's just a possibility, my general recommendation is for people to get the booster if they're eligible. And here's why. Because the point of the boosters is to extend and enhance the already good protection that people have been getting from the vaccine. We know that some vaccines, many vaccines that we've looked at over time, some of them do decrease in their efficacy over time. It doesn't mean the vaccines don't work well. It just means sometimes they need a boost to keep the protection going.
We have heard this week that in the UK, the numbers have increased pretty drastically to the point where it has concerned doctors and hospitals in that country. And they are now asking for some restrictions to be put back in, whether that be wearing face masks or other issues. Do you know why the case count is up there? Is it because the vaccine's efficacy is worn off? Is it because there haven't been enough vaccinated people or something else?
Well, there could be several factors accounting for the UK's rise in cases, but one of them that I'll point to is the fact that it's getting colder. And when the weather gets colder, we know that people go indoors, and indoor settings are better setups for the spread of COVID-19 than outdoor settings. We also know that the virus in general is better transmitted in cold weather, which is why you see so many respiratory viruses spread during the winter months. Look, we had a big surge last winter here in the United States. What's different now for us in the U.S. is we have 190 million people who are fully vaccinated. It still means there are about 65 million people who are eligible who are not fully vaccinated, and that's where we've got a lot of work to do, because we want as many people as possible to protection that will help keep our numbers down as winter approaches.
One group that has not been allowed to be vaccinated at this point are children, anybody under the age of 12. We're anticipating that approval will come in the next couple of weeks. How confident are you in that approval? And then what concerns do you have on the news? We just heard from Pfizer saying that 90.7% efficacy is there in these clinical trials for kids age 5 to 11. But they also admit that the trial's not big enough to really determine if there's or detect if there's any potential risks of myocarditis.
Well, look, this is a very important landmark that we are approaching, which is a possibility of having a vaccine for kids under 12. I say that not just as Surgeon General and as a doctor, but as a dad of 2 kids who are under 12 who has been eagerly waiting this moment. But what's happening right now is the FDA is reviewing the data. Yeah. The FDA is reviewing the data right now, and within the next few weeks, I anticipate we will hear a decision from them. Their advisory committee is meeting later this month. The CDC advisory committee is meeting in the first week of November, and soon after that, we should have recommendations from them on what to do. Here's also what's important to know about kids, though. The FDA is going to look very carefully at 2 parameters. One, is this vaccine effective in our kids under 12? And number 2, is it safe? As a parent, I want to know the answer to those 2 questions before, I make a decision on getting my child vaccinated. And I think millions of parents do as well. So they will not put forward a recommendation to get vaccinated if they don't feel confident about the safety. Now, finally, to your point about rare side effects, there's a reason that we continue to follow people after they start getting a vaccine, even after the trials and the authorization is given, because if there are rare side effects, really rare side effects, you may not see them, until millions and millions of people have been vaccinated. But again, the point here is that there's going to be likely strong benefit to the getting vaccinated if the FDA chooses to authorize it, because we know there's a lot of COVID around. We know COVID is not benign in children. Hundreds of children have died from it. Thousands have been hospitalized, and many have struggled now with long COVID, which are the prolonged symptoms of COVID that can last for months after infection.
Hey, Doctor, a lot of business leaders are watching this broadcast this morning, and many of them have already put in mandates for vaccines. How do you think about mandates for boosters, which is to say that for those over certain ages, over time, as you said, the efficacy is going to wane, and there's going to be questions about whether people can infect others. That's been the whole purpose of this. I know there's a debate about vaccines, whether the vaccine is to prevent infection completely or hospitalization on the other end. But what's your advice to those watching you this morning?
Well, first, I would say to the businesses that have put in requirements already, I just want to say that is a move in the direction of public health and creating safer workplaces, safer places for people to buy products, to get groceries. safer places more broadly we're seeing for kids to learn in universities and other settings which now have requirements. So it's a step in the right direction in terms of creating a safer environment for us. What I'd also say in terms of boosters is that whether or not boosters end up being part of the requirement will really depend on the CDC's definition of who is fully vaccinated. Right now they are saying the definition remains someone who's gotten 2 shots of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine or someone who's gotten 1 shot of J&J. But they will continue to evaluate that, and they may change that over time. If that does change, then a booster may be part of the requirement. But for now, a booster is not part of what's required to be fully vaccinated, not part of the requirements.